Hey, what do you know? We're actually doing a talk video on a Thursday. It almost feels like a novel concept at this point. I'm still doing it in my room because it's still below freezing outside, and I just don't want to do that in my car. But just kind of going over the week so far. I've had weird shiny luck. Like the other day, I was hanging out with a couple friends of mine. We all just kind of went to play some Pokemon. I did nab a couple shinies. I got Amoonguss and I got Gibble. And I know Garchomp has a really bad shiny. I actually really like Gibbles. I like the blue and just like the yellow chest. I think it looks good. Amoonguss looks fantastic. I love its Master Ball colors a lot. But I've had quite a bit of outbreaks in my game. I'm like, ooh, a Fennezen outbreak. Oh, a Lucario outbreak. I mean, I don't really like the piss yellow of shiny Lucario, but I still want a shiny Lucario. I don't remember what it's called. Like, Tadbulb, I think, the thing that evolves into Bellibolt. It does not have a great shiny, and then it's just like the tips of its tail are red instead of orange. But I really like Bellibolt shiny. It's this really nice yellow. Excuse me. I'm like, man, these are some great looking outbreaks. I want to do this. I want to get a shiny of it. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And just no luck, no luck, no luck. And then I'm just, I remember, because for some reason I really like moth Pokemon. Like, I love Volcarona, but I love Venomoth and Venonat, and I really love Frostmoth. I saw a Frostmoth outbreak. Didn't get any. Saw a Venomoth outbreak. Didn't get any. I'm like, oh, well, that sucks. And then I turn around, and then there's just a shiny Amoonguss. Like, I'm not mad that I still got a shiny, and it's a really nice shiny. And this is most certainly a first world problem. Don't get me wrong. I'm like, like, the outbreak is supposed to give me a much better chance, and that didn't give me anything. How did I get you? Like, I'm not mad, I'm just confused. It's like when I was like, I'm gonna try to get a shiny Hatena. I'm gonna do, like, the Sparking Power, I've got my shiny charm, let's go. There wasn't an outbreak. I'm like, I really want to, because, like, I know where I can find Hatena, let me get my shiny. With my shiny Psychic Sparking Power, I find a shiny Dark type. Like, how? How did this happen? I'm not mad, I'm just really confused. I guess speaking of Pokemon, since today is Thursday, today is Frog Day, today is the day Greninja comes out. I'm really not looking forward to it. The only reason I say I'm not looking forward to it is, I guess, to kind of skip to something I'm going to talk about a little later, so let's bring that up now. I am really not going to be available this weekend. I have a cousin's wedding that I'm going to in New Orleans, so I'm excited to go see, the rest of the family. It's been a while since I've seen that part of the family. Not like any issues, like, oh man, I hate this part of the family, or they hate me. It's just, no, like, they tend to live on the East Coast, and I'm here in Oklahoma. Like, I just don't get to see them very often. Excuse me. So I am looking forward to seeing them. I am looking forward to also just spending a weekend in New Orleans. It sounds like a blast. We are driving. It's like an 11-hour car trip both ways. So it's going to be ass, but I'm going to try to do a lot of writing. I'm going to try to read. I'm going to bring House of Leaves with me because I've been meaning to read it. So I know you're supposed to kind of go like a chapter a day, a chapter or two a day. I'm like, I'm just going to binge it. If it's really good, I'll enjoy it regardless. But because of that, I don't want to bring my computer, so I'm not going to do like any reading like of Muv-Luv or anything, which will, quick pin in that. I'm not gonna bring my Switch. I'm not gonna have a lot of time to actually do that when I'm in New Orleans, and the battery's not gonna last that long in the car trip. And there are things I really wouldn't want to lose and leave behind, so I'm just gonna not bring them. So I need to get Greninja today, and it might be a lot of ass. I hope I can get it quickly. The builds I'm currently going with are more support Pokemon. Like, I've got a dual screen Tinkaton that also has Thunder Wave. I've got a water absorbed Clodsire. So just to hopefully have some kind of defensive, like, I'm sticking around. But Clodsire is not very strong, and Tinkaton is also not very strong. So, like, I'm going to be here to support and not, so, like, we have someone here who doesn't die. Hopefully someone can, like, really kick ass while I'm trying to be in the background, like, cheering and shit. We'll see what happens. I hope I get Frog. Let's take the pen out from Muv-Luv. I finished episode 1 of the day after yesterday. I like it a lot. I know I have my problems with episode 0. I think it's, like I said, I think it's Rogue One. It's okay with a great third act. This one felt a lot more consistent. Every now and then there were moments where I'm like, all right, like this is like a dumb, funny moment that's just not as funny, but I thought a lot of them were pretty funny. There's some moments where I'm like, oh, okay, like main character, Hibiki, that's his name, or Hibiki Tatsunami. So like some characters will call him by his first name, some call him by his last name. There's times where Tatsunami is a little slow in the uptake, but a lot of the times I feel like it works. Uh it is a lot more politically focused than the other entries. Like Alternative definitely has some politics in it. This is all about politics, about the politics of the military working with the Americans, but also how they're working with the civilians and all that shit. I actually think it's really interesting. I'm liking it a lot. Very excited to see where the next two parts go. Oh, the next thing is I watched a movie on Sunday. It was like right before the Bills Bengals game, which I'm not going to talk about football in this video. I'll just make it a separate one. I watched My Dinner with Andre, starring Wallace Shawn and Andre Gregory, I think was his last name. I could be wrong about that. My bad if I am. And it is just a movie of two guys going to a nice New York restaurant and having like a 2-hour conversation. And it's two guys who haven't seen each other in a long time. And one guy is talking about, like, all these big, crazy, creative experiences he's had. And so that's Andre. And then Wally on the other side is just kind of giving him the, like, yeah, you sound like a fucking nutcase, but I mean, keep going. What happened? And so that was the vibe I was getting, it was kind of like, all right, this dude is clearly nuts, but, I haven't seen him in a long time. And as kind of Andre kept going, I felt like Wally was going from this guy's nuts to, okay, he's nuts, but I'm fascinated by this. Like, all right, I kind of need to see where this goes. He's like, you sure you want to keep hearing me talk about this, Wally? Like, yeah, like, keep going, man. Like, he's asking the questions that it feels like you're, like, the basic questions you ask to keep the conversation going without being super invested. And then there's a point where it feels like, no, like, they actually do get a lot more invested. And probably my favorite part of the movie is when Wally just goes, do you want to know what I think? Like, do you know what I really honestly think of this? And then he's like, all right, this is what I actually think. And he talks about his philosophy and why he disagrees with a lot of the things Andre is saying. And then while the camera's on Wally, you actually get to see in the mirror, like, Andre's reflection. And there were points where he was just kind of like, like nodding, understanding. There were times where he was kind of smiling. I think I noticed a couple times where he almost looked a little stern or a little sullen, like, oh, like, I'm sorry, like, I didn't really get you with that one. He was like, oh, okay, like, that's something really interesting. I really liked that. From that point onwards, which, it's not to say that I disliked the first part, because Andre telling his stories is fascinating. Like, I was getting really into just the crazy shit that was going on. But by the end, when it's like, this is my philosophy, well, this is my philosophy. And the two are never really at each other's throats about it, which is always good to see. You can have a civil discussion with a difference of opinion. And I found myself being somewhere in the middle. Like, there were some things that Wally was saying where he's like, I like the simple pleasures in life. Like, to me, like, I love the feeling of crossing something off the list. I was like, a man after my own heart. There is something... that there are those things that just kind of make you bite your lip and go, that's good. That's how I feel when I get to cross something off a list. And it's just that pleasure that just gets me right in my soul, and I love it. He's like, yeah, like, I like the simple pleasures in life. Like, I like being... like, what was he saying? He's like, yeah, I love waking up in the morning and having my cup of coffee. Just something like that is enough for me. It's something that makes me happy. But then he also talks about how, I feel like as human beings, we always have to be doing something. And in moments where I'm not doing anything, I hate it. And like, I get that too. I'm like that. I kind of wish I wasn't, but I do get that. There was something else he had said that I don't remember what it was, but I remember thinking, like, I don't quite agree with you on that one. And it's kind of the flip side with Andre. It's like there were some things he said, again, I don't super remember the exact details. I'm like, I kind of vibe with that. Like, just having these great emotional experiences. But then he's also talking about how he's like, I don't think... What was he saying? Like, about how... He's like, I essentially feel like humanity is dying. Like, we are slowly just becoming robots. And there are these small pockets of humanity around the world where people are allowed to live, where people are just allowed to be human beings. But eventually our culture is going to die out. I'm like, I'm not that pessimistic about it. And I just really liked the movie. I don't want to know if I'd say it's a pleasant movie, but it's not like it's super dark or like depressing or like pessimistic by any means. But I found myself just really enjoying listening to the conversation. So I would highly recommend it. A couple games I have been playing, aside from Muv-Luv, is I'm playing Fatal Frame 2 with Clay. He has already played it. I am... But he made it sound like it's a really... From what I remember him saying, he's like, I don't super love the gameplay of it, because he does love horror games, survival horror games. Like, but the story is really good. The atmosphere is really good. I've been playing it, and I kind of agree. I know I've talked about it a little bit. I really like the vibe. I really like the atmosphere. It has the best stutter step I think I've ever seen in a game. I think I've explained it before, that in some games, you can hold a button to run, and in other games it's weird where you actually hold the button to walk. I think in Tales games, I almost said Trails on accident, but because I think I first discovered it in Berseria, and I think you can also do it in Final Fantasy X, where a character has a normal move speed, and then you can hold a button where they'll either slow down or they'll speed up. And if you keep mashing that button as you're moving, your character will just kind of go... And they'll almost be on like one leg, just kind of like they're stutter stepping through the map. And I love doing that. And Fatal Frame 2, to kind of depend... This is also the only game I've ever really seen this in. Depending on like where her feet are when you start mashing square, you can either get her just waddling, like shuffling, waddling across the floor, this like really nasty stutter step, or this one where she is just gliding across the map. And there's a few segments where you'll play as the twin sister who actually like has a limp. She has this real, like, she's very slow, it's very gimpy walk. And her stutter step is so fast. And I know it like... Not 100%, but like it really bothers Clay when I do it. He's like, this is a really atmospheric game. It's a horror game. You're kind of just making it a joke. I'm like, but I'm still getting into it. I think that's important. Like, yes, I am making jokes. I'm having a good time. I'm still getting into the atmosphere. I'm enjoying it a lot. It's very backtracky at times. And he's like, yeah, that's... Survival horror games can kind of be like that, some more than others. But I'm like, I don't really like games that are super backtracky, and it's not like the map is huge. I just don't love that. Personally, I like to... It's why I don't like Metroidvanias. I like to say, here's the game, you are going forward, or you just get to, like, explore, but I don't want to have to go, oh, okay, well, I found a roadblock. Now I'm going to have to, like, let me go in a different direction. Cool, I found another roadblock, and I need to do this roadblock to get to a thing, which will get me the thing that lets me continue in the other direction. But to do that, I actually have to go to a whole nother part of the map, which lets me do this thing, and then I can go all the way to this corner of the map that I didn't even know existed, and then I can do this thing, which lets me do that other roadblock, which lets me do the first roadblock. I hate that. I want to just be able to go. That's why I like platformers. I was like, Celeste, you just go. That's great. There's a little bit of side shit you can do. And it's... I know people love Metroidvanias. I know people love, like, the exploration and how when you get that roadblock, it's so satisfying to be able to come back and overcome it. That's fine. Like, I get that. I hate backtracking. I hate being, like, that feeling like I have made progress. Oh, look, there's another just thing that I can't do. Ugh. Fatal Frame is starting to get there. Like, there were a couple times where I was trying to find a secret passage, and I'd opened the secret passage, and I found it on the map, and so I'm looking at a wall, and I'm hitting X, because X is your interact button. It's a PS2 game, we're technically playing on the PS3. And so I hit X at the wall, and a little message appeared. I was like, cool. Okay, the message didn't really say anything. So I'm looking around, I'm still, like, mashing X on the wall in other parts of the room, and, like, I can't find this thing. Clay picks up the controller, looks at the wall, mashes X, and it works. Am I good? Clay, can you explain to me what you did differently? Because I literally did the exact same thing, and I don't understand. I was looking at that same wall, hitting that exact button. Was I just not at the exact right pixel, the not right frame? What the fuck? And then later, you go into the passage. There's a little underground cave. And I'm walking around like, okay, there's something I can pick up. There's something I can pick up. Okay, now I'm not really sure what to do. Let me mash X over here. No, okay, like there's this like big chest trunk. Okay, let me see if I can interact with this. It's like right here. Hit X, 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 X. No, okay, I can't do anything. Well, have you tried interacting with the trunk? Yeah, I tried interacting with the trunk. All right, well, let me see. And then he goes to the trunk, hits X, which I had been doing, and then it opens like again. Like what am I doing wrong? I don't understand. I'm looking at the thing and hitting the interact button, and somehow, despite doing it multiple times in like different angles, what? I did not have a fun time playing it last night. Like this was specifically last night's section. I'm like this happened twice. This is fucking stupid. Why? Another game I've been playing is Lunar Silver Star Story Complete, which is a PS1 remake of it's a Sega game. It's like the Sega Drive, Mega Drive, I think. I think this game came out in the remake came out in 1998 or so it is an old ass game. You have these old 90s character designs, this old 90s voice acting. This game is like a time capsule of late 90s anime-ness. And I love it. A lot of the mechanics just feel tailor-made for me. There's no random encounters. You can save anywhere on the overworld. Okay, those are the mechanics that are tailor-made for me. Combat's weird. Because it's your turn, you select all your, what you want your characters to do, and then combat just plays out. It's your turn, select your stuff, you go, and then the enemy gets a chance to respond. It's, you input your shit, and then characters, whether they're on your side or the enemy side, are just gonna go depending on their speed. It's weird. I don't hate it, I don't think I quite love it. The way item inventory works is each character has their individual inventory, which is both their equipment and any items you give them, which it's a lot more forgiving than Ryza was, because Ryza, I think you only had 2 inventory, outside your equipment, only 2 inventory slots, which I hated because that's just not a lot. You have a lot more. I'm just not a big fan of this character will only have their certain specific inventory compared to here's the list of all the items you have, whatever you need, they got. I got stuck on a boss. Because I got to the boss and I was like, oh, well, this was a pretty long dungeon with a lot of enemies. And I'm basically running on fumes. I don't have a lot of health. We don't have a lot of magic. And I don't have a way to really heal all of that without going back to leaving the dungeon. But if I do, I have to refight everything. Because while there are no random encounters, it is just here's the enemy, you can't really avoid them because they just kind of make a beeline for you, and so you almost have to fight them. And you can run, and when you, after you run from a fight, which is not 100% guaranteed, once you run, your character is flashing. So you're okay, you're intangible. But you can't run through an enemy when you're like that. You still, they will still be physically blocking your path. So okay, I still have to fight basically the entire dungeon again. Which means by the time I get to the boss, I'm still going to be running on fumes. Now, on the one hand, it's well, that means you get to grind, you can get a little stronger, which is cool, but one thing I understand about this game is the bosses scale. So, I don't know if it's just their HP or all their other stats as well, but I know their HP, it's a base number times whatever your level is. So cool. If I level up and get stronger, technically so does the boss. So I don't really want to do that. What I want to do is just to be able to fight it with a full deck, but there's nowhere in the dungeon I can heal, and I don't... items for my health, but not enough for my magic. Because, this is ass. Now, the game is really fun. It's really enjoyable. Like, I like a lot of the dialogue. Like, it's very... I don't want to... It's not necessarily mean-spirited, but it's really snarky. It can be really snappy. Just... It's a lot of fun. It's a very enjoyable experience, but after doing a pretty long dungeon where I just had to fight a lot of shit, I was like, cool, now I can get to the next story, because you don't always fight bosses at the end of dungeons. Most of the time you don't. I was like, cool, we can get to the next story. Oh, there's a boss. Oh, there's a boss. Fuck. What else do I really have to say? My Bubba, who's right over here, hello, Muhammad. He's actually been sick past few days. Like, he peed in my clothes, which I was very mad at him for. And I called my mom, and we were just talking. And he's like, yeah, like, how's your son? I'm like, oh yeah, he's fine. He peed in my clothes. She's like, that might be a sign that he's sick, because sometimes they do that. Maybe we kind of need to get him checked. Like, make sure, like, whenever he does pee, like, there's not any blood or anything. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. Then maybe 3-4 days later, he does it again. And I get very mad at him. And then I look at the bottom of the basket and I actually see blood. I'm like, okay, this is a problem. Call my mom. Can you set up an appointment with the vet? I need to get him looked at. So he goes to the vet. This was Sunday. And then he went to the vet Monday morning. Got him looked at. He has a UTI. He has some antibiotics. I've been giving it to him. I feel like he is doing better. And yesterday he peed in my clothes again. There was no blood, thank goodness. I feel like he is getting better, but I'm starting to get really fucking annoyed with this. So I went and because I just have a laundry basket. So yesterday I just went and bought a big green tub so I could have something with a lid. So I'm just going to have my laundry in there in this box with a lid so we can't pee on it anymore. Yeah, the last few things I've talked about have got me very annoyed. But I love him very much. Ain't that right, Bubba? Ain't that right, my Bubby boy? So I'm laughing because I see one of the things I wrote down was just Shannon Sharp's cardigan. So the story is Shannon Sharp, Hall of Fame NFL tight end, host of Undisputed along with Skip Bayless. I think he was at a Laker game and he was jawing at one of the players, and then I think it was at Dylan Brooks, and then Ja Morant, like star player for the Grizzlies, comes over, starts jawing back at Shannon, and then Ja's dad shows up and starts jawing at Shannon. He's like ready to fight everybody. It was just this really bizarre thing that happened, but the best part was just his cardigan. It looked really nice. Apparently it was like 1,500, 3,500. It was something thousand, like 500. Like, that's... I wish I had that kind of money to blow on a cardigan. It would like pay off my credit card. But it's like, that is a really nice cardigan, though. And I know there's this, like, just this image of Shannon just kind of like almost this, like, snarl on his face wearing the cardigan while there's, like, people in the back. I think there's, like, this one guy in the background, like, yelling. Like, it's actually, the picture goes kind of hard, but I just wanted to bring it up. It's a funny story. The last week or so, I found myself re-listening to the Fall Out Boy album, Fully Ado. It's an album I really like. I first started listening to it when I was living in Australia, because that's when I was actually buying CDs. I bought the album and listened to it, like, time again. I enjoy it a lot, as I just said, and every now and then I just kind of get the urge to, like, I'm going to listen to Fully Ado, and then I listen to it for, like, a few days, and then I just don't. But what was interesting to me was, like, I was listening to it and I kind of got out of listening to it, and then, like, a day later, which I think was yesterday, I learned that they're actually coming out with a new album. I think it's supposed to come out in, like, February or March. It's like, yeah, I was just listening to Fall Out Boy, now they're getting a new album. I don't think I've actually listened to everything from ABAP. I've liked it, what I've heard. It's just not my favorite. But who knows? Like, I might actually really like... What is it called? It's like... it was something Stardust was the new album. Like, Don't Count on Stardust or something like that. Like, I'll definitely give it a listen when it comes out. Like, I'll probably find the tracks on YouTube, and if I really like it, I'll buy it. But we'll see what happens. Really the only other thing I have to say in this one is I have a project. I think I said like an episode or two ago, I came up with a new story idea and I really wasn't ready to share it, and I've been kind of messing around with it. It is not that one. That is something that I still don't really know how it works. I might try writing it when the 11-hour car trip between like reading House of Leaves, but this other project I've actually been working on for a couple years. Like I would write it and be like, this isn't working. I don't know why. I would have to like rewrite it, and there'd be several parts I'd have to scrap, and other parts I'd just have to rework, and other parts I could keep as is. And then I would learn more about how the story actually worked and the characters. I was like, well, shit. I didn't think about that before. Oh, that makes way more sense. Oh boy, so I have to rewrite all of this. It's been a process, but I finally finished the first book. I say that in air quotes because it doesn't really have a climax. Like it kind of does. Essentially, it's about 300 pages on Word, so I don't know how it actually look printed and bound. It might still be 300, might be a little less, might be a little, I don't know if it would really be a little more. But regardless, the first, and I'm editing the last 100 pages or so right now before I start moving on to the next part. There's not really a climax. There's a big event that happens, but I feel like this is mostly just setup, introducing a lot of the major characters, getting into like what really a lot of their story arcs are going to be. Big incident happens, but it's less of a climax and more just no, this is the inciting incident. Now it's an open world. Because essentially from this point on, like there's multiple narrators. At this point, there are 3. You have 2 main ones, and then a third one who just kind of gets a few chapters. We're about to get a 4th in like the next part of the story, because the story just kind of splits up. It's like, okay, this character is going over here, this character is following them, this character is going over here, and this character is just kind of staying back in the capital, keeping an eye on things, trying to hold down the fort. And because a lot of these stories don't really interact for a good while, I'm like, I can just kind of write chapters and stuff in really any order I want. I could do this story in the capital for a few chapters, and I can do these people going to the island, and I can do you chasing you, because you don't actually interact with them for quite a while. You kind of got your own shit on the way to follow them. Ooh, this is why people like open world so much. This is amazing. This is so much fun. This is what I really liked about Pokemon. Like, I'm so happy. There is nothing that like, genuinely brings me more joy than writing a story. Than coming up with an idea, developing the idea, figuring out what the plot is, who the characters are, what some of the big events are, and actually writing it and seeing it come to fruition. And as I write it, learn, I had no idea how anything actually worked. But the characters do, and the story does, and they're going to tell me how things go. It's great. It is, for me, it is just pure, unadulterated bliss. And knowing that I have finally finished, more or less, again, I have to edit it, the first part of this, because this is a long pitch. I know that it's essentially 4, so, I don't want to say it. It's like each book is essentially its own series. I guess to put it another way, like let's put it in like a Trails way, because that's an easy way for me to understand things. The first book is Trails in the Sky, and not the game Trails in the Sky. It is Sky 1, Sky 2, Sky 3. The first book essentially covers that entire arc. The second book, this is Crossbell. It covers all of that arc. The next one is Cold Steel. It covers all that arc. That's kind of what I mean. So it's almost like I feel like I finished writing the first game. A lot of stuff happened. We met a lot of people. We're setting up a lot of cool shit. Now I get to really start writing the journey and adventure and a lot of the cool shit, twists and turns that's going to take, and then the climax. And in my head, this whole thing is just like the first big story arc. And multiple characters are having their own journeys and adventures and long story arcs. Then I get to write part 2, which is probably longer. I don't no, but etc. etc. I'm really looking forward to it. I have another. I mean, I actually have a lot of things that I've written, but there's one that is. It's 4 books, but it's not like 4 separate story arcs. To me, it is. This is just one story. And what I think is really interesting about it is how each book actually gets shorter. Because I feel like in most stories, especially like big like fantasy, I mean, not like these are big. They're like, I think the first book in total is like 500 pages, like something like 450, 460. Each book gets progressively shorter because the first book is like, all right, we have a lot of setup to do. We have to do, because the basic plot of that one is people get trapped in a video game. If you die in the game, you die. If you beat the game, you all get to leave. Or SAO rules. Because I hate SAO, but I like SAO rules. Like, I want to write a story with that. Let's see what I can do with that premise. And I fucking love Oro so much. I adore writing it. I love everything about it. Anyways, point. The first book, you have to set up all that stuff. You have to introduce the entire main cast. Then in the second book, you're like, cool, there's a lot less setup that needs to be done. There's still a lot of scenes of just characters having a good time, just hanging out, but I don't have to worry about all that crap. Cool. Then in the next book, you're like, we've lost a few people, so there's less scenes. I don't have to balance all the. Excuse me. I don't have to make sure I balance everyone's screen time because there's a lot less screen. There's less people to have to balance now, and there's a lot less time for a lot of the fun, dumb shit. Although it's still there, there's still moments for it. It's a lot more dense. I think at the last book, we're like, the cast is small now, and we were just trying to beeline, and like, oh, I love it so much. I just love writing. I love telling stories. Yeah, I feel like that's in a video where I've been talking about a lot of things that get me annoyed. I'm glad I'm ending on something that makes me really happy.